Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody around the world. My name is Suzanne Bowles, and I'm calling in from the Northeast United States. This is Mi'kmaq and Passamaquoddy territory of the Northeast US. Very, very proud to be here at the Global Summit this year with some of my most favorite, fantastic community organizers. Thank you for joining this Featured Voices panel. Today, we're talking about collective intelligence. I am the chief strategist for a firm called Cattail Strategy, and we look at what it's going to take in order to make rapid, sustainable, joyful transformation towards a flourishing relationship between humanity, between humans, and also between humanity and the planet. And I'm really proud today to be facilitating this discussion around what is the role of collective intelligence or community intelligence when we think about global goals and our opportunity to be in well-being together. So things like the Sustainable Development Goals. What do we have as people within us that might be lesser explored, or that we might be able to bring into a fuller ability for us to achieve these kinds of goals together rather than individually. And so I'm very happy to be joined by 4 wonderful people today. We've got Anshu Gupta, who's calling in from India, and he's with an organization called GOONJ. We've got Rose Maruru. She is calling in from West Africa, and she is with Epic Africa. Godfrey Okumu, a former colleague of mine, actually, also calling in from West Africa with an organization called Tostan. And finally, Lucian Tarnowski, who is calling in from Croatia, but global citizen, if you will, oftentimes in the Pacific Northwest and in the West Coast of the US, calling in from Croatia at the moment. So rather than me going through trying to tell people about you, I thought we'd use an introduction question where we can actually speak to the audience through our relationship with our work. So I think maybe we could begin with Godfrey, because you're my friend and I have no problem throwing you right under the bus. My question is, what is collective intelligence to you? And why is it important to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals? And the challenge of the day is to try to do this one in 3 minutes. So give us a little sense of what you think of from Tostan and your perspective as collective intelligence and how it achieves the SDGs. Thanks, Godfrey.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone. Greetings from Dakar, Senegal. Here it is still morning, so I know there are different times everywhere. My names are Godfrey, Ochieng, Okumu. I work with Tostan International. I'm currently based at the Dakar the African office. That is like the global office. I am a program officer who is also part of the training team at the Tostan Training Center, and I'm also the focal person for our training and replication pathway. And currently, we are doing some work also in Nigeria, apart from our 5 countries that we are currently working directly in West Africa. So first, because 3 minutes is too short, I will basically just dive direct into explaining what collective intelligence is, according to me. Collective intelligence, I will use a lot of examples from Tostan's work in the 5 African countries in West Africa. Collective intelligence is more like a shared group intelligence that really emerge when people build a mutual collaboration, when people are brought together and one uses respectful approaches to actually facilitate a process that can help them achieve their vision of well-being, whereby they can sustain the actions that they agree upon that will ensure that they have a sustainable development within their community. It is also stewarded by ownership. Actually, one of the foundations is ownership. It has to be a process where the community owns everything, where they interrogate on their own based on African values or values of their originality, looking at what are the values vis-a-vis the practices that are hindering their community or their common social network from achieving a vision of well-being. I will give an example of how Tostan 3-year program is actually implemented. This 3-year program is what we call the Community Empowerment Program. The Community Empowerment Program believes in the community's ability and capability to spearhead a transformational journey where their values that they have been living, they have been staying with for decades is respected, but the practices are actually influenced within their own self based or using respectful approaches, ensuring that they also understand why it is important for them to actually change some of these practices. And this is what at Tostan we call value versus practices deliberation. And that is what our program invests on in the first year of the 3 years. And also we are anchored on human rights principles as the foundation of ensuring that when you want to influence certain practices, it has to be based on a universal agreed communality where consensus can be agreed upon, where nobody feel like I have lost it or someone feel that I've gained. One of the dangers is if you have a scenario where
you're going to have more time. You're going to have more time. Thank you, Godfrey. Very good. Now we're going to see a little bit about somewhere on the other side of the world. Anshu, if you're comfortable stepping in and answering the question from the perspective of the wonderful organization GOONJ and your own leadership. What is collective intelligence and how is it important towards the Sustainable Development Goals and other global goals? Thank you, Godfrey.
Thank you. So, Suzanne, when I got the invite for this, speaking and all, I was really wondering that I always talk about the language and lenses. And when you see that you talk about the top down and bottoms up, so I really try to figure out that, what is this bottom all about? Just because the people do not have huge amount of money or people have not studied in the so-called best possible universities, do we really feel that they are at the bottom of it? I mean, when we talk about the intelligence, when we talk about the collective effort, I think if we start with the wrong narrative, if we start with the wrong language, where we say that we are the donor and other people are the beneficiaries, I mean, these are the demeaning words which we have been using, and these are the distorted lenses which we are actually going through. We are not understanding the grit of those people, the resilience of those people, the wisdom of those people, and the people with whom we try to work, all of us on this panel. I mean, there's a huge amount of wisdom. There is a huge amount of resource management where in very little resources, they are actually not only able to manage, but also are able to grow. I think this is what in the last almost more than 2 decades, we at GOONJ have been trying to do. We are saying that we will never use the word donor and beneficiary, but we will call everyone a stakeholder. And we will not only call it a stakeholder, but we will actually use what people have. So if we have to make a bridge in a village, how can I actually make it or design it? I don't even know how much water comes in the monsoon season in that particular river. It is basically the local wisdom and the local knowledge and local experience which can guide us. And one of the reasons that a large number of development initiatives by the government, NGOs, corporates, and all fail, because we are not listening, we are not learning, we are imposing. So in our model, in nutshell, just in a minute, what we are trying to do, we say that the village communities will identify the problem, and the village will decide that whether they need a road or a bridge. It will not be a top-down so-called approach where people like us will go and say every village will have a road. Listen, one particular village does not need a road. For them, the priority is cleaning up a water body. It's very simple. And for the other village, it's more important to make a center for the kids so that they can really go and sit for some time and study. So this is how the entire model of GOONJ works, which is highly dignified I mean, where the dignity is the center, where people choose, people participate, people work, and we are just the catalyst in that entire thing. We will never go and say we know how to do it, we know what is needed there. I'll stop here, but I think in the last 2 decades, what we have learned, that we are actually underestimating the larger part of this world, because we are not treating them at par. We are not respecting the wisdom and what they have. If we do that, even our work will become much more easier.
It's beautiful. Thank you so much, Anshu. I'd love to actually, I'm going to save Rose for last and move to Lucian and hear a little bit about Unified Planet and Civana House and your perspective on collective intelligence.
Sure. Well, good morning. Good morning to everyone. Thank you so much, Suzanne, for inviting me. And congratulations to the organizers of this. It's a great feat. So collective intelligence is probably the topic nearest and dearest to my heart. And I unequivocally believe that without collective intelligence, we're going to have complete systemic breakdown. In fact, the only way through this eye of the needle is through, think of it as like the human hive. The reason we launched Unified Planet on Earth Day, I'm celebrating 50 years of Earth Day this year, is we believe that the story comes first, the narrative comes first. And without being a unified planet, there's no hope of us achieving the SDGs. In fact, the Social Progress Index shows that we're currently on track to achieve the SDGs in 2082. A serious failure with huge funding gaps, etc. And so what we see through 12 years of experience working around collective intelligence is that there's silos across the board. There's silos with funding, there's silos with organizations, with efforts, there's huge amounts of duplication of efforts, and that we're frankly lacking the all forms of intelligence around the way we're delivering on the SDGs to rise to the challenge. And so the way we've been applying it is Civana was set up really as an organization, a planetary innovation ecosystem to deliver on SDG 17, which is, we think of it as like the linchpin SDG. It's like the meta SDG. And it's all about mobilizing resources and applying collective intelligence. And so we created an online platform and a basically like a prototype planetary embassy in San Francisco, where we would bring people together, experts together to apply collective intelligence to all sorts of systemic challenges. Think of them as like the acupuncture spots of systems change. And what we did with Unified Planet is we created a game, because just like Buckminster Fuller, who's a great kind of grandfather, elder of our collective effort right now to deliver on this, what he called the design science decade, what we call the golden decade, he said that we need a new world game. And so what we've been experimenting with is how we can use game dynamics to apply collective intelligence. And so we bring teams of 12 to 24 people together to create a hive mind. And the first thing we've learned is that collective intelligence starts by humans deeply trusting each other, coming into a space of coherence, and from that place, letting their experience speak through the group. And what I'll finish with is a dear friend, Don Tapscott, who wrote Wikonomics, says there's 4 things that we need for collective intelligence. 1 is openness, 2 is peering, like peer-to-peer interactions, 3 is sharing and a spirit of sharing, and 4 is acting globally. And we can see that we're completely missing those principles on the kind of world stage of politics. And that's why we believe it's time to return to community and create a new planetary system.
So beautiful. You can tell already that I'm not going to have to facilitate after Rose goes through, because you guys are going to get into it. Rose, please share your perspective synopsis of collective intelligence and how it relates to the work of Epic Africa. What's your perspective? You're muted. It's typical.
Yeah, hi, thank you, Susan, and thank you to the fellow panelists. It's really an honor to be among you guys. So collective intelligence. So from the perspective of Epic Africa, and I'll just tell you guys a little bit about Epic Africa. So we are a startup nonprofit, and what we're trying to do is to fill a gap in the African nonprofit sector around data. So the situation on the continent is that the general trend is that we have a lot of nonprofits, NGOs, and whatever name, civil society organizations, or whatever name and label you want to give it to. But it's often very difficult to actually know who's where, who's doing what, with what impact. And one of the results of that is that, and Lucian, you just said it, the duplication, a lot of siloed work. And so the collective never comes together to actually share lessons and to build on lessons that have been learned before. It's like everybody is constantly reinventing the wheel. So we think by creating a platform where nonprofits can find each other, they can connect and collaborate, and we're hoping that that's going to bring much more collaboration. And we've already seen this, especially in this COVID time, where we're seeing more groups coming together around, joint campaigns and that sort of thing. And we hope, we'll begin to see some mergers, among some of these groups, some of which are very small. So for me, that's really kind of an example of how we can draw on each other. For me, the whole idea of community, you can think of community as a place. We can think of community as shared values. We can think of community as people, organizations working around a similar issue. So those are all different communities, and I think to collaborate, it's everybody wants to collaborate. Everybody talked about partnerships, but it's really difficult, especially given the sector's sort of business model, if you will, where it depends on donations from individuals or grants from institutions, and the very model of funding development is itself very divisive. So they set up organizations to compete rather than to work together. So our dream would be that we can start to see groups actually coming together and trying to generate resources as a group to do the work that they do. But the problems that we're trying to solve, whether it's global warming or all the SGD 17, 16 goals, those are really intractable, huge and deep problems, very complex, very interconnected. So I think it's really foolhardy for any one organization or any one individual to think that they have the solution. I think it really takes drawing on everybody, drawing on individuals, on experts, drawing on communities that are affected, drawing on governments and all the stakeholders. I liked what Anshu talked about language. I think language is really important. I think the history of our sector, especially on this continent, is that the rise of NGOs was really very much driven by an idea that governments were failing and structural adjustment, and government should get out of the way, and now nonprofits can somehow replace governments, and of course we've seen that doesn't work. So now the new language is around business and social enterprises and impact investing and all of that. I'm not going to say what I think about that, but for me it's really, we all really do need to come and work together and learn from the bottom and from the top. So to me, it's not either or. I think it's a forced dichotomy. And I think our role is really to disrupt that and to change that, thinking.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So you can see we already have some collective intelligence just happening right here. We're all complementing each other quite nicely, I think. So for the next section, the idea is that we'll kick it off with a discussion. And I have a discussion topic in mind. I'm thinking about the relationship between what we see as expertise and the role of the expert versus the notion of experience. And I'm thinking in particular about this emerging notion around what does it mean to have systems awareness or systemic awareness? Who has awareness of the places where the systems are failing us? And there's, at Cattail Strategy, we believe actually in a notion called margin-centered design, which is that people who have been in many cases most marginalized by our current systems often have the greatest ability to see where those systems are failing, and also then become incredibly important actors in systems change solutions. So I just wanted to kick it off. I want to go back to Godfrey, because Godfrey, you were really kind of wrapping around this a little bit anyways. I'd love for you to give us a little bit of a sense of, like, from Tostan and your perspective, what's the role of the expert and the role of experience? And how would you say that from a Tostan perspective? And then from there, Godfrey, we're just going to invite other people to sort of participate and come into it in a discussion style. So you might get interrupted again. I think you're on mute, just so you know.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now I'm not on mute actually. Okay, thank you very much. What I can say about experts and experience when it comes to community intelligence or work that is related or associated with system change, starting from the community. I think it is very important for us as experts, including me, to really understand that our role in development is to facilitate and not make decisions. Because in my 19 years experience, what I would say today is that the experts in development that we do are actually the community members themselves. Community organization or institutions that have invested in community in terms of their expertise and their experience have been able to change things and turn things around. And actually, this is something that I have actually seen practically happening in Tostan communities. When I first came for Tostan training in 2018, I was able to visit some communities that was still implementing their action, and even there was evidence of things evolving. There was evidence of them developing new visions simply because they were given the opportunity. A good institution or a good expert should be someone who believes in people. You need to believe in people. You need to believe in communities. You need to help them to aspire. You need to tap that capacity to aspire. You need to trigger it. These communities can do miracles, or they can do magic if they are empowered, if their capacity to aspire is nurtured, and also if you prepare them. There's no way you can go to a community and you want to work with them because you're an expert and you don't train them. You don't build their capacity. You don't identify their priorities and their needs based on their capacity gaps. You see, they might not be as expert as you are, but there's something they know. As Suzanne, you've said, there's something they know that if it can be done, can change. But they need that voice. They need to develop that agency for them to have a common voice that can influence the system. So that is what I wanted to say. Thank you, Suzanne.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. And it reminds me of Anshu. I'm thinking about collective value creation and the difference between having like sort of a top-down model of what's valued that comes into the community. And this is something Godfrey works with a lot. And I'd love to also, but however, but I'm reminded of how GOONJ actually has models for looking at what is of value. And I'm curious if that relates to your answer at all, or what you might say to Godfrey as well.
So, to be honest, just a little bit off the track to start with, because what I'm challenged now in the last, say, 4 or 5 months, especially in India, and in 7-8 months across the globe, is this entire COVID or Corona stuff, right? So my whole question about this expertise and experience and all that is that if this absolutely, we don't even know the size, it's just absolutely invisible, something called virus. If it has not challenged the expertise and arrogance of most of us, then actually we are not learning. We are still not learning. The most, so-called famous countries, most established medical systems, the fanciest airports, the busiest markets, to be honest, everything failed. everything absolutely failed. Otherwise, how come we lost so many people? How come we are not even able to maintain the right data? All this technology, we have been singing a song about it. The technology can solve all the problems. Yes, it can bring us together and have a Zoom call because we are too finicky about conferences. But at the end of the day, if I talk about my country and many other countries, I know that my village communities uh, who do not have the expertise in our lenses, but they have the experience, were actually much better. They were able to manage the quarantine centers to the people in a much better way than the most beautiful cities and the governments. Why? Because they might not have expertise, because expertise is something which we decide through our own lenses. We are not, you're not calling that expertise what they have, but they have the experience. They have huge amount of experience. They have seen disasters in life much more than us. So I will bring it back to the COVID experience, and I say that this is the time when people like us really start valuing those people much more, whom otherwise we prefer to call beneficiary, or who are always a part of a small number or a big number in our impact sheets, uh, as we say. Let's start learning from them that how they manage their stuff. I mean, I know in India, when people were going back to the villages, how the smallest possible schools were converted into quarantine centers, and how people from village communities actually came and provided food to those people. I mean, that comes from the experience. Our strength at GOONJ, to be honest, has been nothing. We literally don't know. Uh, we don't know the economics. We don't know the power dynamics. We don't know the ecosystem of a country like India, which is like which has so many states and which are of the size of many other countries, where every single step you have a different language, different culture. We have been able to do some large scale work because we valued what people have, just because we valued what people bring on the table. We never negotiated on that. We always went there with a learning mindset, and that's how it has been happening.
Beautiful. Rose or Lucian, would you like to jump in?
Rose, would you like to? I'm happy to. I'd love to introduce a
Go ahead.
concept.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Thank you, Rose.
Yeah.
Thank you. So I agree with what's been said, and I'd love to throw in a piece around here, because so much of the gridlock that we're currently facing is because we're looking at these like wickedly complex challenges from this existing canvas of how the world is today. And so, and we've got countless experts, and as Rose said, NGOs, they're competing with each other for funding. I often say with a smile that NGO stands for not getting organized. And it's like this crazy world where the marketplace of funding is completely upside down. It's like those that are working on the same problem are competing with each other, and there's like experts really like swinging, I'm not even going to say what, to like build up their egos and their careers. And what the reality on the ground is we're winning battles and losing the war. So the question here is like, how do we change the lens? And I'd like to introduce something we've been calling FQ. It's like IQ, but instead of your intellectual intelligence, it talks about future intelligence. And so something we've been doing is we've taken thousands of people now into 2030, where we start with the narrative that we've already delivered on the SDGs. We've created a planetary civilization. We've created a thriving world for all life. And from that place, we encourage people to imagine 100x solutions, 100 times like quantum solutions. So it's more practice of like visioneering and imagination and like childlike wonder of how do we do this? And like from the anchor point of 2030, reaching backwards and letting that influence the solutions that get funded and how people collaborate. And so what I've seen is that one of the most powerful ways of applying collective intelligence and building collective expertise is storytelling, is bringing people together around a shared narrative and having childlike faith that we've done it, that we've delivered on the SDGs, that we're actually capable of this. And so I would just like bring this in here as like in reality, the pursuit of individual expertise is often at the cost of collective expertise, because people don't share knowledge, they hoard knowledge. And whenever knowledge is power, we have a problem with the SDGs, because it ends up creating the financial incentives to create more silos. And so I would just encourage us to paint a new canvas, a completely fresh canvas, and then use that like North Star human narrative as a way to bring the present forward towards it, and as like an anchor point.
I love that, not getting organized. That's now in the lexicon. And I'm curious, Rose, you know, from your perspective, what you've seen as the role of how data can be organized, how data and anything else that you might want to add to the conversation. I'm also just reminded of the role of, you know, attitudes, perceptions, and beliefs that I know organizations like Tostan and also probably GOONJ are already coming up with methodologies to measure these qualitative elements in order to demonstrate and show changes at the level of societies around their capacity to aspire the way they envision each other in their social fabric. Really interesting work. Thank you, Lucian. Rose, anything you'd like to add? I'm curious your thoughts.
Well, not really. I guess it's just to again, you know, say I agree with, you know, the foregoing contributions. But to Lucian's point, I think also we spend a lot of time, understandably, you know, talking about problems. So I like that there are people who are actually imagining a beautiful future, you know, and that we can start driving, you know, towards a beautiful future rather than always it's problems, because that's more inspiring, I think, than, oh my God, you know, the world is coming to an end, you know, seas are rising, and that scary sort of message. I don't know, sometimes it just causes despair, I think, and you think, what can we do? So I think it's also time to really begin kind of boldly imagining and dreaming. And one of the themes that Epic Africa has been pushing very much is like, let's reimagine the whole civil society thing. Like, why do we exist? You know? And just really kind of go back to the drawing board and just rethink the model, rethink the role, and begin to just imagine a different world. And what we've seen, and COVID, horrible tragedy, but it's creating some opportunities, because I think by laying bare all these issues that we know, it's really also laying bare that, you know, no one country is going to do this alone. We're in this together. We might be in different parts of the plane, but if the plane goes down, we're all going down, you know, doesn't matter if you're sitting in first class. So I think this whole message of how we really are in this together, right? So it's a moment, and I don't know how we're going to capitalize on this moment, that we are really in this together, and we need to get our, you know, act together and really start to collaborate in a more substantive and fundamental way, not just to have my idea, I'm going to tell it to you, do you like it, but really think together. And if there are movements, hopefully there are movements that are trying to do this, I think for me that I find that inspiring.
Yeah, I'm just struck by the fact that we have sort of all the levels of the different scaffolding organizational perspectives here. You know, we've got Godfrey and Anshu, who in various ways work very intimately at the level of community aspiration. And then we've got Rose, who's looking across civil societies, across the continent level. And then we've got Lucian with this beautiful like world vision of like a game that people can participate in that inspires them. I'm just so curious from like a practice level. And anyone who would like to jump in, and I'm looking at Godfrey and Anshu in particular, since it's been a second since you've spoken, what have you seen works in terms of practice around, is there like an anecdote or a story that you want to share around how your organization leads to the surfacing of new human potential, or what that looks like in a specific way, something that may have happened that really struck you as surprising or emergent or beautiful? And anyone who wants to can jump in on that.
Okay, maybe I can jump in. Sorry, someone was sending me a lot of text. I want to share an experience of a community that I visited in the Gambia. It is called Somkunda. One thing that struck me with this community is they're able to remember what happened during their sessions of the community empowerment program almost 8 years ago. You see, why is because the way the community empowerment program is designed, it is designed in a way like what some of my co-panelists have said. It is strength-based. It believes that communities have that capacity to actually influence change. It connects with reality. It gives the community the time to reflect, the time to practice these actions. Because there's no way when you talk about behavior change, you design interventions that are superficial, things that are, yes, you can model based on a theory, but when you are too much theoretical, it kind of disconnects from reality. So if you have sessions or if you have interventions that can allow community to practice, to apply, and give feedback to themselves and say, wow, I tried this, it didn't work. What do you think? How can we do it better as a community? And what do we need? So I think it's very important. We have very great ideas, but in Somkunda, I learned a lot of things because that is one of the few communities that I was able to find in a local community that is almost 100 kilometers from Base, no road, no tarmac road, bad roads. You go down there, you still find they have their minutes for their first meeting written in their mother tongue, in their local language. They have the books of account of how they have been saving, who saved first, and they can give you, they are well kept. The government has recognized them, and they have received a lot of support because of how organized they are. Going back to what Lucian said, that NGOs not, not getting organized. As we NGOs, we are not getting organized. The communities are actually giving us, or they are putting a new lens that things can be done differently. Actually, now most of the people are learning from them.
So to start with, to be honest, we should stop criticizing the way NGOs operate a little bit, okay? Because I think we are into too critical critic mode because of, a lot of people talk about collaborations and all that. And I feel that at least in our experience and experience of hundreds of other institutions, I've seen that wherever we find an opportunity, we do collaborate, and we collaborate in a big way. So going back to Rose thing, I think it's extremely important that we build up on the positive part of the voluntary sector or the civil society sector world, because if even if maybe some of us were failing in the past, if we see the role of the civil society in the COVID crisis, I think in India, it is one of the most vibrant thing which has happened. I mean, now even the Aam Janta, as we say, the common people and the government also have no option but to accept that. It's very, and we are the people who are never trained in dealing with such disasters. It's all by the heart which comes. We are not trained, but we were at the forefront of something where even doctors were not going in many cases. This is one part, because that's an emotional part. The second part on the community part, just to build up on Godfrey. We do this. Our larger initiative is called DFW, which is called Dignity for Work, where the second and the new material which we collect from the cities, almost 6,000 tons a year now, which otherwise always has been treated as a charitable subject object, is like a parallel currency or a reward model, where people will dig their own well, they will make road, they will clean water bodies, and after a few days of work, they will receive that material. So so giving is very dignified, and also is the revival of the barter economy, the second-hand goods of the society of the cities versus the labor or the community wisdom of the villages. That's the model. So just one simple example which we will never forget. In 2013, we had massive floods in the mountains in one of the region called Uttarakhand, and a large number of people died, completely destroyed. It went on for many days. And then I remember a cluster of 12, 15 villages were completely cut off, and we were not even able to go with the relief supplies there. And that's how this, for Dignity for Work, some people got together and they created a small wooden bridge so that we can cross that river. And that family kit was given to them. And we exactly knew that in the month of June, when the monsoon happened, this bridge will not be there. It cannot handle that kind of flow of water, which means September we'll have to create again. But at least for 8-9 months every year, till the time a formal government concrete bridge comes up, this will solve the purpose for 88 or 9 months. Next year, in the month of September, people come back and they say that we want to create that again. We do not want the family kit or the relief kit. We just want 2,000 rupees, which is not even about $20-30. And that too also because we do not have cash right now. Cash economy is not started. And that too also just to buy some nails and the mesh wire. That little bit of material we gave and a much better bridge came up. And can you imagine, since then, for almost 5 years, till the time a proper bridge was made, every year in the month of September, that bridge was made. From the year 3, no one came to us. They only came to us to say thank you and show us a design or a picture of the bridge. And every year, the bridge improved, the bridge became longer, the bridge became stronger. And they never ever asked for something. I mean, there's a book which we came up called 100 Stories of Change, and in the first story, there are actually pictures of 4 years that how even the design of bridge changed, and it started looking so beautiful and sturdy. And that's what community has.
So I don't get it. What do they get for it then? I'm being a little glib, but I'm curious because there's so much focus on this value of monetary, exchange and the transaction. But just referring back to something that Lucian said, it's interesting you started something called FQ because some of us have been involved in a movement called CQ. And I wonder, CQ is around community levels of intelligence, how brilliant we are between each other and with each other, and how so much more can emerge from the collective. And I wonder what the relationship is between the collective intelligence and the future intelligence, and what are the levers there. And I just love to hear, Anshu, if you want to answer that question, like, what do you feel it is that is of value that people get from doing things together for community?
I think, the most important part is that recognition and acceptance of what you are. I think in our model, I will just say that, because we are not going and teaching and preaching. We are not saying that this is how it should happen, this is what should happen. People are taking decisions. And it is our problem. It is the problem of so-called, experts, I would say again, that we go and try to decide something. We're not understanding that when we were not there, they never called us. Fine. They never invited us. It is our some problem here that we decided to go and then intervene in that area and said that this is how it should operate. They never, how many tribal people have ever come to my office? Not even one, not even to my city that way. I go there with my own agendas, with my own maybe, desire to do something good, whatever, but I'm not listening. So what people get, if you recognize that this is your land, this is your culture, this is the way you want to live, right? And I'm not here to impose my, Delhi learning or Mumbai learning or Senegal learning. I'm here just to sit with you and understand that can we co-create something, can we do something, can we bring, because fortunately I am much more exposed by traveling all across, or by getting access to Google maybe. Can i can, can i share more, and whatever is acceptable to you, if you give that value to people. I mean, in our model, the only thing what people get is the value of for what they are. And that's extremely important for all of us. So then, if you do not value, if you come to me and start putting everything on me, I will do it, but I will do it physically, not emotionally. I will not be a part of it. It will not belong to me. I will work for it, but it doesn't belong to me. That's what people get. And that's very important for each one of us.
I'd love to build on that,
Yeah.
Suzanne, if I may. And Anshu, I just want to really underscore what you said about the front lines, and people working on the front lines are collaborating and are, they're doing their best, and they're doing their best given the existing system. One observation that I've had across the years is that the goals, even the SDGs is based on the existing paradigm, the existing system. One friend of mine put it beautifully, that said the SDGs is like putting salad on the McDonald's menu. It's a good thing. Salad on the McDonald's menu is a good thing, but it's still McDonald's. And so what I'm getting at here in terms of like the structural change is fundamentally, I believe we need a system reset. We need to redesign. And so the question here is, how do we redesign? And then this links to the connection between FQ and CQ. For me, for 99.9% of human history, of our history as a civilization, we've organized ourselves through communities. And so if you're a betting person, you could say, like, we're going to organize the future through communities. And yet communities are systemically like underserved and underfunded. When was for a community to raise money, it needs to become something it's not. It needs to become a company or a foundation, etc. So we're really not utilizing the full power of communities is number one. And just would love to share an anecdote of personal experience. Last year, I led a working group with Rockefeller Foundation at the Bellagio Center, which is this amazing place on Lake Como in Italy, where Garvey was born and other things like that. So, Rose, it looks like you've been there. But the purpose of the working group was called connective tissue, creating an SDG nervous system. And so I just want to look at that. What the body doesn't have to think, it doesn't have to have a plan to say like, oh, I need to get this much blood or this much oxygen to my left big toe. It works as a holistic system, and that's the thing we've got to aspire to. The thing we synthesized from this collective intelligence of this working group was, one, communities are underutilized. They're the best way to create coordination and trust. Two, we need more experimentation and coordination around what creates effective communities, effective networks. And our hypothesis was, one, networks are undercapitalized. We need a way to fund networks, not just organizations, because that's the incentive challenge. Two, technology advances aren't being underutilized. Where is the AI? Where is the Google of the SDGs? Paul Polman, of the former CEO of Unilever, is correct that the SDGs is the greatest economic opportunity of a lifetime. Where's the funding for, where is the ecosystem, right? you know, then we need this network of networks. And then finally, we spoke about the responsibility of capital stewards to distribute funding in a way that doesn't create competition, but creates cooperation. It's an incentives challenge, and it's deeply systemic. And I would say that those responsible are like often the grant givers, the governments that are creating competitors out of those in the field. And that's what we've got to like systemically address. So I just wanted to bring that in because I feel it's like, it is the connection between CQ and FQ.
That is, oh yeah, Anshu, we're going to do closing thoughts. So let's, I wanted to go to Rose next because she signaled at the same time as Lucian. So you'll be able to close out with whatever you wanted to say. So Rose, if you don't mind, I'd love to hear what you wanted to respond to Anshu, and then we'll go to Lucian next because Lucian has a train to catch. He's a busy man. And then we'll go Anshu, and then we'll let Godfrey.
I think I'm going to turn off my video because my connection is really bad.
Oh,
so what I was going to say, stories, and Africa is replete with stories of experts and expert-led white elephants, as we used to call them. And one of the really poignant stories, which it's sad that we still have to tell the story, because maybe the other challenge we face is that I think history should become compulsory. I mean, like how did we come to be where we are, right? Because there's a story told about, these experts who came to, some village somewhere. A big problem they saw is water. Women are walking 10 kilometers to go and look for water. So naturally, just dig a well, right? So they dug a well, and then they came back a couple of years later to see what's happening. And they found that the well had been trashed and women continued to go fetch water. So when they dug a little bit more, why are you leaving the well to go to the river? And it turns out that for the women, this was the only time that they could be together with their friends and take a break legitimately to leave the house and go somewhere for a walk. So, again, listening to the wisdom of the people and understanding sort of what has gone on before you, the expert, came into this community, which, has been existing for, probably, thousands of years, and the wisdom of time, and to be humble. I think it takes humility. It takes, it takes sort of going away also from this sort of very individualistic, I'm the superstar. I have, because that's the motto, right? I'm the superstar, and I'm that, guy that's conquering it. To realizing that actually, even when you're that person, if ever there is that person, you're standing on the shoulders of giants. Other people have come before you, and I think that's a lens, I think, and a value that's really, really important, and really to look. There's some things and some models that happened in the past that I think we abandoned, and they were not entirely bad. Demba, I think maybe you were too young. You know about the Harambee movement in Kenya, and Harambee means pulling together, and on the dawn of independence in Kenya, all the way through to the 70s and even early 80s, communities organized around water, but it was communities organizing, but working with government. So for example, government would say, okay, we'll bring the water, we'll bring the piped water, but communities will dig the trenches, and you will also pay for the connection from the road to your house. And schools were built that way, hospitals were built that way. So government will say, okay, you contribute the labor, contribute some of the inputs, and we will bring the doctors and we will pay the doctors. And it worked. A lot of the development that we saw in Kenya in that first decade and second decade of independence actually came from that sort of working together. But there was trust. There was definitely trust, more trust between I guess, government and communities. So also, I think as we think of these issues, it's also to locate them and situate them within also what's happening at the political level and our systems of governance, and the complete and utter breakdown in trust between citizens and their governments. And that's an issue, that's a framing that I think can also be very, very useful, because much as communities are strong, much as communities have done things on their own, I think also we may be asking too much. Like they need input. You know, we are citizens, we pay taxes, there's certain covenant between us and our governments, and much as we may try to bring the change we want within our communities, we live in a larger ecosystem. And so the whole issue of movement and looking at movement as one way of perhaps bringing the larger systemic changes that impact what we're trying to do in our own little communities, I think it's important to keep that in view, I think.
Thank you so much, Rose. So we have a hard stop in 4 minutes. That was a wonderful note to close out on. I'm going to ask each person to just say their Anshu, if you'd like to start by just reminding us your organization, where to follow you, and maybe one final word within like a minute. Thank you.
So final word is that I feel that even the SDGs might have to look into itself again, because it's not a post-COVID world, it's a with COVID world. So maybe we'll have to really rework on the SDGs also. That's what in other forums also I've been saying. And extremely important to value people and make them a stakeholder instead of me and you, donor and beneficiary, or all kind of those words. And for GOONJ website, I would say goonj.org, goonj.org. That's the best place to be in, because that has link of all of our social media and all that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anshu. Godfrey, close us out.
Okay, thank you very much. This was really an inspiring session, and it was great to be in panel, part of the panel with these amazing global leaders who has really great wealth. What I say is that it's important for us to listen to the communities. I really like what Lucia said, is if we really invest in these communities, if we believe that they can be the foundations we want to see, they can have the strongest trust, they can manage their own resources, then we won't be here talking about achieving SDGs. We will be seeing things rolling out. So as experts, our role is to ensure that we facilitate interventions that appreciate the community's capacity and capability, that believe in strength-based, that are value-driven, that are respectful, that are holistic, and that put people in the center of everything. I think if we do that, we will be talking less and acting more. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Godfrey. Lucian, would you like to give a closing word? He might be on mute. Lucian's moving to get a train right now. I know that much. As we say goodbye, we might hear from Lucian, but I'll just say thank you so much. This has been a delight. Again, I'm Suzanne. I'm with Cattail Strategy. We look at the intersection of systems awareness and community intelligence for philanthropies and movement builders. And this has been Collective Intelligence from the Top Down to the Bottom Up, a webinar of the Global Summit #7. And thank you all. Have a wonderful day. Please continue to follow the event and the featured voices leading up to much more for our global community. Bye, everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Suzanne. Bye, everyone.